Japanese American civil rights activist Yuri Kochiyama was born in San Pedro, California. She and her family were among the 120,000 Japanese Americans who were rounded up in California after the hysteria that followed the bombing of Pearl Harbor. In the following speech, she recounts her experiences in the detention camps.
I was red, white, and blue when I was growing up. I taught Sunday school and was very, very American. But I was also very provincial. We were just kids rooting for our high school. I was 19 at the time of the evacuation. I had just finished junior college. I was looking for a job and didn't realize how different the school world was from the work world. In the school world, I never felt racism, but when you got into the work world, it was very difficult. It was 1941, just before the war. I finally did get a job at a department store. But for us back then, it was a big thing because I didn't think that they had ever hired an Asian in the department store before. I tried because I saw a Mexican friend of mine who got a job there. Everything changed for me on the day that Pearl Harbor was bombed. On that very day, December 7th, the FBI came and they took my father. He had just come home from the hospital the day before. For several days, we didn't know where they had taken him. Then we found out that he was taken to the federal prison at Terminal Island. Overnight, things changed for us. Most Japanese Americans had to give up their jobs, whatever they did, and they were told they had to leave. The edict for 1966, President Roosevelt's edict for evacuation, was in February 1942. We were moved to a detention center that April. We were sent to an assembly center in Arcadia, California in April. It was the largest assembly center on the West Coast, having nearly 20,000 people. There were some smaller centers with about 600 people. All along the West Coast, Washington, Oregon, California, there were many, many assembly centers, but ours was the largest. Most of the assembly centers were either fairgrounds or racetracks, so many of us lived in stables, and they said you could take what you could carry. I was so red, white, and blue. I couldn't believe this was happening to us. America would never do a thing like this to us. This is the greatest country in the world. So I thought, this is only going to be for a short while, maybe a few weeks or something, and they will let us go back. At the beginning, no one realized how long this would go on. I didn't feel the anger that much because I thought, maybe this was the way we could show our love for our country. And we should not make too much fuss or noise. We should abide by what they ask of us. I'm a totally different person now than I was back then. I was naive about so many things. The more I think about, the more I realize how little you learn about American history. It's just what they want you to know. We always called camps relocation centers while we were there. Now we feel it is appropriate to call them concentration camps. It is not the same as concentration camps of Europe. Those we feel are death camps. Concentration camps were a concentration of people placed in an area and disempowered and disenfranchised. So it is appropriate to call what I was in a concentration camp. Historically, Americans have always been putting people behind walls. First, there was the American Indians who were put on reservations, Africans in slavery, their lives on the plantations, Chicanos doing migratory work and the kinds of camps they lived in, and even too, the Chinese, when they worked on the railroad camps where they were almost isolated, dispossessed people, disempowered. And I feel those are the things we should fight against so they don't happen again. The whole period of what the Japanese went through is important. If we can see the connections of how often this happens in history, then we can stem the tide of these things happening again by speaking out against them.